Hey guys, it's Olivia here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my top reads of 2019, and I'm so excited. I read 178 books this year, as I mentioned in my previous video, and I'm probably going to read two more, but I don't think they're going to be 5 stars. I didn't just pull all my 5 stars, but I had a lot of them. That is how good a reading year it was, but I couldn't choose 10, so I have 15. I hope you don't mind that I have 15, but let's get right down to it because this is going to take a while otherwise, and I do want to tell you about all these books in as much detail as I can. So the first book I have to talk about is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a backlist book, but I read it for the first time this year, and The Hate You Give is a young adult contemporary that focuses on Star, and she's in the car when she's pulled over and her best friend is shot by the police unjustly. And this is about protest and about her thoughts, feelings and reactions to Black culture and police brutality. This book, there was nothing in this book that I didn't agree with, and she said everything that I would have wanted to have said about Black culture, about racism, about police brutality and what's happening in America lately and at the moment with how the police are a bit too trigger happy in some situations. And I feel like it dealt with this huge topic really well and narrowed it down to some focused points and themes and subjects that she really could dig her fingers deep into in this book, and she was very careful with her wording of things, and I felt like it was done very sensitively when it comes to the grief of the situation, when it comes to the politics of the situation, whether you feel like you can make a change as a young teenager or not. And it was just such a powerful and moving read. I recommended it to my mum, who enjoyed it. I recommended it to my sister. I watched the film adaptation. It was a fantastic book. Definitely recommend to everyone out there. Secondly, I want to talk about Becoming by Michelle Obama, and this is a non-fiction book that follows Michelle Obama's life. And I know you think it might just be about her being the president's wife, but it really does go back to the beginning of her life and talks a bit about herself before it comes to her being married to Obama while he's president, and also it talks about her own achievements as First Lady during that time. This one I listened to an audiobook, and I highly recommend that because Michelle Obama reads it herself, so it's like you're just listening to her talk about her life. And I have to admit, I was someone who had no interest in presidency and, American politics. I keep up with it because that's kind of just what you do, but I wasn't that interested in it. But this really changed my perceptions of what it means to be president, what she was doing and what he was doing, and the difficulties of navigating being a mother while also being a politician. Thirdly, I want to talk about A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer, and as well as that I'm also including the sequel, A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Brigid Kemmerer, because although this comes out in January, I was lucky enough to get a review copy from Bloomsbury, Australia, so thank you for that. And I've read that one already, and I also absolutely head over heels loved it. Definitely one of my favourite reads this year. So this is a fantasy series, and it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but it's one of the best and most realistic retellings of Beauty and the Beast that I've ever read. Harper is this very smart and very strong-willed character who is full of kindness, and she has cerebral palsy, which affects one of her legs, and she gets dragged into this fantasy world by this guardsman called Grey, who is looking for a girl who can break this curse, which transforms the prince into a monster every season or every term until he can break the curse. And although it seems like it's one of your stereotypical Beauty and the Beast retellings with some disabled rep in there, which it is, but it's more, because you are going to fall for these characters. You are going to love these characters. You are going to see how decisions royals make also affects citizens, and you really get a good look at how it's affecting other people and the world. And you are just, I don't have words for how this book is going to make you feel, but it's one that can make you laugh, it's one that can make you nervous. There are plot twists that you will not see coming, and the ending, that ending, guys. Please read it, please buy the sequel next year, please love it. Next up, I have to talk about The Seven Husbands of Evelyn and Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I assume is going to be on many people's lists this year. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo follows Evelyn Hugo, and she is a celebrity who is quite old now, and all of the people that she's had very close to her and who she really loves have either passed away or not very connected to her anymore. So she decides that she is going to hire an interviewer and have an interview where she spills everything about her life and her 7 husbands. She has chosen this young journalist who is not very well known for this huge interview with a major celebrity. And Monique, who is that journalist, does not understand why Evelyn has chosen her. But Evelyn has her reasons. What can I say about this book other than it's really interesting and it changed my perceptions on love and marriage, and it showed me that love and marriage can really mean different things for different people. Evelyn Hugo is not the most likable character, and yet I absolutely loved her. And I feel like people have a complex relationship with Evelyn Hugo. You can dislike parts of her and love other parts of her. She feels so real. It's like she can jump out of the pages. Her story is so interesting, but it shows a strong woman. And the romance in this one, I can't even, it was something else. I've never read a book like it, and everybody's hyping it up, and you should definitely read it too. The 5th book I have to talk about is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and Patrick Ness is going to make a return onto this list later on as well. A Monster Calls is actually a middle grade read. I recommend the one that's illustrated by Jim Kay, and it's about this young boy whose mother is very ill at the moment, and yes, he's got a lot of emotions and struggling with her illness. And when he's dreaming, this monster calls to him. And that's really all it is. But what can I say about this book other than it handles the topics of sadness, death, illness, and grief very, very well. And it does it in a way that children can understand, it does it in a way that adults can understand, and it does it in a way that was really powerful and very emotional. I felt it personally because I've had my grandfather's pass away from cancer, but I feel like this is one that's going to manifest in different emotional ways for everyone, but either which way, it's an absolutely beautiful story, marvelously written, 100% recommend. Moving on, we have The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed, and this is one of my most feminist and female strong books that I've read this year. We follow these 3, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 girls, and they live in this small town where rape culture and misogyny is quite high, and guys are getting away with doing the most awful things. There was a girl who claims that she was raped at a party, and she had to move out of town because of all the backlash that she got for declaring this. And when these girls all meet up in this school, they decide, hey, it's about time we do something about this disgusting rape culture that we have going on, and they are taking a stand for themselves. What can I say about this book other than it was like The Hate You Give, but it was not about police brutality and black culture, but it was about feminism and intersectional feminism at that. And I felt like there was nothing said in this book about feminism and intersectionality that I didn't agree with. Everything she said I completely support, and it was just magnificent for what was said about intersectional feminism. Like, it includes everything: LGBT plus feminism, black and minority feminism, and it was just so well worded, so well handled, and such a very carefully planned book. We follow different main characters. So we've got a main character who is autistic, we've got a main character who is Latinx, and we've just got a variety that we follow. But the us chapters are what made it very magical, because it incorporated other girls' opinions on the movement that was going on, which meant that you got to see from different perspectives, and that's where the intersectionality really struck home for me. And I also just want to say that personally, as a Christian, you probably see me wear this cross necklace in a lot of my videos if you watch me regularly. But as a Christian, it was a very groundbreaking book for me, because I read a lot of LGBT plus books because I want to show my support, of course. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but in a lot of these books, Christianity is kind of really frowned upon and portrayed in a very negative light. A lot of it is extreme Christian representation, but it doesn't specify that it's extreme, which is a bit hard for me to handle, to always see my religion in such a negative light. It is a dominant religion, and I know that a lot of people have been harmed by Christians in their life, which is fair, especially the LGBT plus community, which is, again, I say fair. But as someone who is a Christian and also supportive of the community, it was really nice and really groundbreaking for me to see my views on the LGBT plus community plus being a Christian combined, and I've never actually seen a representation of my belief in such an accurate manner, and it was really emotional and powerful for me, and every time I think about it I get a little bit teary, which is new for me. So seeing that representation was really powerful, and I just urge any other Christians out there who are supportive of the community as well, do recommend you read The Noah Girls. It's going to be groundbreaking for you and you are going to feel so emotionally connected. It's going to be a long video, guys. I have to talk about The Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribay, and I was given a review copy of this by Stripes Books, so thank you very much. This one is an eye-opening book for me. It follows this main character who lives in the States, and he has a cousin who he used to be very close with, but he's kind of fallen out with, and his cousin lives in the Philippines. He's actually American Filipino, and his cousin gets killed. But nobody wants to talk about how he died or how he was killed or why he was killed, and he is very frustrated by this because he wants answers even if they've been estranged for quite a while. So he decides he's going to go to the Philippines and find out some things for himself. All I can say is wow. This book deals with two things in a very good way. The first one was that it was my first book set in the Philippines, and it also deals with the drug war happening in the Philippines and a leader in the Philippines, and it's a situation that's ongoing today that I knew absolutely nothing about, and I feel like in the Western world at least, a lot of people don't know that much about it. So if you want to read a book that's going to be quite informative and eye-opening, but still as young adult, I would definitely recommend reading this one. But it also deals with grief in a very different way than I've ever seen it, because even if you used to be close to someone and you're no longer close to them, you can still grieve. You can still feel sad, you can still feel guilty. And I feel like grief in books is often portrayed as someone close to you that you really are familiar with and that you know, but not someone that you've known but has passed on. So it was a new take on grief that I don't usually get to see in books, and it was handled very well. And it's a very character-driven book, but the accumulation of all the things that was happening and all the emotions and the cultural struggle between being, you know, Filipino but also being American was just handled so well, and it was spectacular. I feel like it's an underrated book and more people need to read it. Then we're going to bring Patrick Ness back. We're going to talk about the Chaos Walking Trilogy. This book came out ages ago, but I only read it this year. I loved this series, and if I'm going to pick out a favourite of all three of them, it would be The Ask and the Answer, which is the second book. I can only tell you about the first book, but I do want to say that the books really do change a lot. Like the first one has a certain theme, then the second one has another theme, and the third one has a different theme, and it handles each of those themes very, very well. I'm not going to tell you what they are because I feel like it's best to go in not knowing it. But the first one, I'll just tell you about the situation. We follow Todd, who is this young boy. He's 12, and when you turn 13, that's when you become a man in this world. But he lives in this very unique world where all your thoughts are on the outside, and people can hear your thoughts, and they call this the noise. They hear all your thoughts on the outside like a chaotic sound, and there are only men in his world. There are no women whatsoever. It's just men and their thoughts, which are out loud. However, Todd discovers something which leads him to believe that he needs to run away from everything he's known before, and while he's on the run, he comes across a girl. And guess what? The girl emits no noise. He cannot see her thoughts. That's basically the premise for this book. But I just want to say that this book goes way, way deeper. Of course, there's some discussions about gender and how women are treated and how men are treated, but also the noise comes into play with that, which really means you can dig in deep. There's also this kind of native species which exists in this world, so you get kind of the conversations of, you know, colonizers versus indigenous, you get some environmental discussion, you get some gender discussion. It really overlies a whole load of things. As the future books come in, it spirals into some more themes which are also just handled spectacularly. I do want to do a series review later on, but don't miss out on this series, don't do it. Then I want to talk about The Space We're In by Katya Balen. This is one of my favourite middle grades that I've read this year. It's a contemporary, and we follow these two boys, Frank, who is 10, and Max, who is 5. We're following from Frank's perspective. And Frank is the older brother to Max, who has severe autism. Colours are very painful for him. He can only eat certain foods. He doesn't communicate with his voice. So Frank is just kind of living his life as a child, and it's very difficult for him because he loves Max. Of course he does. Max is his brother, but at the same time Max gets lots of attention, and 10-year-old children, they also need their fair share of attention. Their mum is also very strung out looking after both boys, and then tragedy strikes the family and it's about them trying to cope with that. This book was emotionally a wreck for me. It's the one that probably made me feel the most while I was reading, because I am not someone who cries when I read books, but I had tears in my eyes basically the whole second half of the book. Like, something sad happened, tears in my eyes. Something happy happened, tears in my eyes. I just couldn't handle any more emotions than this book had already given me. It really handles some very deep and dark topics for a middle grade read. There's some grief, there's some death, and I feel like, as somebody who has a disabled younger sister, it really does a good job of representing being a sibling to someone who needs extra care, extra love, and extra attention, and the complicated emotions that can come with it, especially from a child's perspective, in a way that other children can understand. It was so sensitively done and so well done. Please read this book. Then I need to mention Dracul by J.D. Barker and Dacre Stoker. This one is a spin-off of Dracula, and it's written by Dracula's great-great-grandson, I believe, and also somebody else co-authored. And in this one, the author, Bram Stoker, of the original novel is put into this book, and it tells the story that inspired him to write Dracula. So it's a vampire story, and I can't really go into too much detail with this one, but it reads like a classic. It's got the kind of classic writing style that Dracula has, but it has a bit more of a more interesting plot, in my opinion, that was more exciting for me to read, even if it was in the classical writing style, and it was just fantastic. I love vampires, so I just really enjoyed this one, which is why I put it on this list. I just enjoyed it a lot. Then I need to mention Rend by Rowan Parrish. This is the second book in a series, and it's a new adult series, so you can read it as a standalone, but yeah, it's the second book, and we're following Matt and Reese, and they are a married couple. I find it very rare to find new adult romances that follow married couples. It's an MM romance, and these two men are really close and really in love. However, Matt tends to spiral in his thoughts and is a very closed off inward person, and when Reese goes on tour for his music, Matt is by himself and away from Reese for a long period of time, which has not happened before in their married couple life, and Matt starts to spiral and just grow more and more inward as he's alone for longer and longer, and by the time Reese comes back, he doesn't trust Reese anymore, and he suddenly reverts back to square one of when him and Reese met, and it's about them working as a married couple to kind of work through Matt's mental health and bring him into a more comfortable headspace. It was scary reading this one because I was relating to Matt as a character so much in the way that Matt thinks, and I was like, oh, I was reading it as Matt was spiraling, and I was like, oh, I relate to this, I relate to this, I relate to this, and then it suddenly hit me, as the book also hits you, that Matt is actually not in a good headspace when he's thinking all of these things, and I'm like, man, I was thinking, wow, I need to change my own headspace. So personally, it was one that really helped me because it really changed the way I was thinking and how I was handling certain situations. And I feel like it was just such a very powerful book because we don't get to see books about married couples and some of the struggles that they go through. And it also talked a lot about being a foster child and bad foster care systems. And I was something I'd never considered and never thought about too much. So it was really eye-opening to me as well. Continuing on the new adult romance, I need to mention two books by Alexis Hall, and just mention them as one in this video, and that's Waiting for the Flood, which is a very short novella, which was very cute, and then there's also Glitterland by Alexis Hall. Now, it might have been the fact that I moved to Australia this year and I'm missing England in some ways, but these are very, very English romances. In Waiting for the Flood, we have this like grumpy bookmender who lives on his own, and he has a stutter, and he's kind of just closed off, and England has floods, and he's waiting for this flood that's supposed to come, and the flood crew come in to help, and he starts to fall for one of these cute little flood maintenance guys, and it was just very British, and we got a stutter character, and it was just cute. And then Glitterland, we've got this upper class posh British guy who ends up falling for this Essex, you know, very outgoing, very extra guy. And they're from two polar opposite sides of the, I don't know, British spectrum, but they fall in love and it comes with like consequences. One of the main characters is also bipolar and has some scars, and it kind of unpacks the mental health side of things too. They were just both very cute and sensitively written romances that I definitely recommend, both male-male romances. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about plays and poetry. So I've got two poetry collections for you. The first one is These Wild Houses by Omar Sakar. He is a Muslim Australian bisexual poet, and These Wild Houses was just, it's beautifully written with wonderful metaphors and images, and the poems are about, you know, not having a stable house, some of the pain that comes from relationships that go sour, being a Muslim bisexual writer, and it's just, it captured emotion so well. And you would think that it would be an angry poetry collection, but there's happiness, there's beauty, even in the dissonance and unawareness of what's going on and no security in the future, but still there is beauty. And I just felt that it was such a powerful collection. Really enjoyed it. And then the other one I have to recommend is For Coloured Girls Who've Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough by Ntozake Shango. And this is a choreo poem, which is something that she's invented herself, and it's kind of a mix between a play and a long poem and a dance. So music is involved. All these ladies, it's female centric, kind of take on different roles as they enact what it's like to live in America as a black woman during the civil rights kind of movement. And it was very emotional. It gets really deep and dark. It talks about unemployment, it talks about relationships, it talks about being ignored, it talks about discrimination, and it just hits you with all of these things, but it's one long poem, and it was emotional and it was powerful. And if I can write a poem like that, I know that like I've made it in life as a poet, because that was just something amazing that I recommend to everyone. You can also go and see it on stage if you're in America, I believe. If you're not into reading poetry, maybe that's the best way for you to consume this, but please try and find a way to have this in your life. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about two Shakespeare plays. I am a Shakespeare fangirl, and one of these is actually a reread, and I was not supposed to put it on this list because I'm not supposed to put rereads on this list, but I reread it this year. Like, I read it for the first time this year and then reread it this year. The first time I read Antony and Cleopatra, I was not a fan, but then I watched the adaptation and reread it, and now I'm just a huge Antony and Cleopatra fangirl, because in that play it's about Antony and Cleopatra's kind of storyline, but fictionalized-ish, you know, Shakespeare, a Shakespeare touch. And Cleopatra is so extra and so dramatic. I love her. And then Antony is just really tied between love and duty, and he kind of makes mistakes, and it was very dramatic because, you know, Shakespeare's dramatic, but it was very, very good. And it deals with themes of like time, love, politics and war very, very well. Then we also have to mention Coriolanus by Shakespeare, which is a political play, and it's about this war officer, and he's a very good soldier, basically. He's really good at what he does, but he gets kind of thrust into a political limelight, and he doesn't want to be a politician and he doesn't want to be there, but he ends up being inarticulate about what he wants, so he ends up as a politician, and then there's all these people judging him and wanting things from him, and he doesn't want to be a leader. Basically, he's a reluctant hero in a Shakespeare play, and everybody kind of just takes things from him and manipulates him, and he just ends up in places he really doesn't want to be. I feel like it was very interesting to see the role of a mother and the influence of the mother in this play, and I also liked how it dealt with politics and how people don't always want to be in the situations that they end up in, and I felt like Coriolanus was just a character I wanted to encircle in my arms and protect forever and keep him away from everybody who wants a piece of him. And because Shakespeare plays make me feel, they just have to be included. Guys, this is such a long video, but I read so many great books in 2019. These aren't even all of my 5-star reads. There are more 5-star read books that I couldn't include, but I wanted to include, but I couldn't. So in the comment section down below, I'm actually going to link all of my wrap-ups for 2019, like all of them. And I don't mean that you have to go through and watch all of them, but if you go through and watch like a single one, you'll probably find a book I either didn't like or a book that I loved. Please let me know in the comment section down below what was your favourite book in the year of 2019, or one of them, or many of them, because I couldn't choose either. And yeah, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. I've got some big plans for 2020, so I'll see you on the other side. Goodbye.